I'm posted in Miami. Bikini go to the bottom when the feet is feeling sandy. Yes, I'm feeling kinda shady, but I'm chilling in the sun. Wrap my dick, cause baby.
All right, the Jaguars. Jaguars is a crazy, fun team to me. I can't hate them because they have great players that like the way they drafted them. The Miles Jack. Miles Jack. He had the knee issues, kind of coming into the draft. It was talked about. He was a kind of a first round pick type, and he dropped to the draft boards because of some I think MRIs, or it looked like he had damage to his knees. And the Jaguars went ahead and went after him. Jalen Ramsey, another guy that I really liked, and they went after him. I thought he was the best player in that draft a couple years ago, and he's really panned out to be a really good cornerback. So it's really hard for me not to like this team, but it was ridiculous how fast that they came onto the scene last year, coming from a team that won 3 games the year before to winning 10 last year. And just to watch the team and to think every week, this team's really not that good. You looked at their offensive weapons and you said, all right, what's his name went out week 1? Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson went out week 1. And you're like, okay, this team's screwed. Then Marquise Lee comes onto the scene, plays really well. And then who was the other guy? Keelan Cole played really good last year. Allen Hurns came on and played really good last year. So they had a couple of guys come on in the receiving core that played good for them. And then Fournette was really good last year as well. They were able to run the ball. That was kind of the emphasis to start the year, was they wanted to run the ball, and they wanted to run the ball a lot. They rode the offensive line that they had, and rode Fournette for most of the year. Bortles was not asked to do a whole lot during the season. They were able to coast pretty well through the first of the year. Got off to about a 6-3 record, and then But my question was all year is, when Bortles is asked to come onto the scene and really fix things for him, when the defense isn't playing as good, when the offense and the offensive line and the run game's not going good, can Blake Bortles do it? And, there's a couple weeks where Blake Bortles fucked around and he didn't do it. And then there's a couple weeks where he did all right and he got his team, to the point they needed to be. My thing is just the difference between the Jaguars and the other elite teams in the NFL is their quarterback situation. Now, I know, if you didn't watch any football last year and you watched the AFC Championship game between the Patriots and the Jaguars last year, you would have said that Blake Bortles looks like a pretty good quarterback. You would have said, man, Blake Bortles is one of the better quarterbacks in the league. Now, if you're like me and you watched every other game, you would have been like, okay, Blake Bortles is playing out of his mind for this one game. Like, let's not get crazy. Now, you're at a point where I was at the point last year where I said the Jaguars are at the point where they can win a Super Bowl if they have a quarterback. I thought that for the Jaguars, the best thing that they do is to trade for Kirk Cousins, to trade for an Alex Smith, to try to get one of those not elite quarterbacks, but like guys that can get it done, guys that are trusted. And I know that, either of those guys are elite, but they're better than Blake Bortles, okay? And, I just felt like the Jaguars aren't a team where they need a guy. They don't need a Kirk Cousins type, or they need a guy that can chunk the ball downfield. They don't need Alex Smith that can chunk the ball downfield. They're content with running the ball. They're content with their defense and their special teams. But at the same time, Blake Bortles is not going to be the guy to get it done. And so my biggest thing last year was this offseason, if this team wants to become if this team wants to get to the next level, getting a quarterback is step one. And that's something that they don't agree with me on. They like Bortles. They're sticking with Bortles. And they're going to continue with the same formula. They're going to run the ball. They're going to throw the ball when they have to. And they're going to just ride behind this offensive line. And they're going to be able to continue to do that with the people that they added. They already had Brandon Linder. And then they added Andrew Norwell, a really good what's he? He's a guard from Carolina. So, and this guy had a monster year last year, and now he's on the Jaguars. Some other things: DJ Hayden, a guy from Detroit; Cody Davis, safety from the Rams; Dante Moncrief, wide receiver from the Colts; D.D. Westbrook. D.D. Westbrook is healthy; he's going to be going this year. They got rid of their shitty ass. Well, Mercedes Lewis wasn't a shitty tight end, but is that who? No, never mind. Okay, they don't have a shitty tight end. They had Julian Thomas a couple years ago. They didn't have him last year, I don't think, but he was fucking ass, and I'm glad that he's gone. Alston Safarian Jenkins is a tight end. He's resurrected his career. We'll see what kind of player he can be on this team. Niles Paul was added as well. He's a guy kind of like a third tight end type guy that's continues to make teams in this league. They lost Aaron Colvin, not a good loss there. Alan Hearns, another bad loss. Mercedes Lewis became a free agent. Lost the guard Omane to the Giants. Paul Posluszny retired. Paul Posluszny retired. Their rock at middle linebacker. That's going to be a tough thing to replace. He came from linebacker U, Penn State. He's been a solid linebacker ever since he's been in the league. Bounced around from a couple of teams, but he's always been a solid player. That's going to be a tough loss. But they do have Miles Jack, who will probably come into that role. And then Allen Robinson, he had a good year a couple years ago, but last year he was completely hurt. They didn't need him at all. They were 10-3 without him, or 10-6 without him. He's off to Chicago. So for the Jaguars, I think this is going to be a good team. I think this is a team that's going to be competing for the AFC South. I think it's a team that's going to be competing for a wild card spot just with their defense and their special teams. Their special team was by far one of the best special teams. The way that it was able to score, the risk that it would take to try to get its team into games or get its team ahead of games. So I think this is going to be a good team. I think this team can potentially be a playoff team. I see the Patriots winning their division. I see the Steelers winning theirs. I see the Jags or the Titans winning theirs. I see both those teams making the playoffs, and I see two teams out of the AFC West making the playoffs. And if there's one other team that might make the playoffs, it'd be the Ravens. So I think the Jaguars are definitely a candidate to make the playoffs this year. I think it really just goes on the shoulders of Bortles. If the Jaguars leave games up to Bortles, they'll probably lose. If the games are not left up to Bortles and they can win without Bortles, if their defense can get things done without him, I think this team's going to be good. But the more pressure you put on Bortles, I think the worse this season goes for the Jaguars. And this season may be a season of revelations where they find out that Bortles can't be the guy. That this is a team that's right where they need to be, but Bortles is what's holding them back. So that's what I think about the Jaguars. Draft-wise, I thought they had a pretty good draft. Taven Bryant was a good pick. DJ Chalk, I think DJ Chalk is going to be a really good player. He was really fast. He definitely wasn't that impressive at LSU, but LSU doesn't pass the ball that much. What really impressed was his 40 time. His 40 time was one of the better 40 times at the Combine. I really like DJ Chalk. Ronnie Harrison, a guy out of Alabama that you get in the third round, that's got to be a good pick. He's a safety. I think he's going to be good. Will Richardson, tackle out of NC State. NC State had some of the most draft picks of all in the draft last year. There's a lot of good talent at NC State last year. Tanner Lee, not a big fan of Tanner Lee. But I mean, if we're talking Blake Bortles here, Tanner Lee wasn't even a top 20 quarterback for me. So, I mean, I don't know who their quarterback people are. So they're looking at the wrong people there. Leon Jacobs, I think Leon Jacobs could come in and be a really good linebacker for this team. He's out of Wisconsin. Wisconsin has really good defensive players, and he had a pretty good year last year. And then Logan Cook is slated as their starting punter out of Mississippi State. They had an all-right draft. They didn't have a lot of draft picks, but I think they did pretty good. I think it's players. They didn't really need any starters. They have a lot of starters. These are a lot of like role-type players that can come in and get a little bit of playing time and somewhat and maybe become a starter one day. So I thought it was an all-right draft. And then talking about things that I thought they needed to do, and I thought a real quarterback Viva trade. So I thought they should have traded for a quarterback. That's something they didn't do. They needed to re-sign their wide receivers. So they didn't re-sign Allen Robinson. They re-signed Marcus Lee. Allen Hurns is gone. They re-signed Jaden Mickens. Jaden Mickens had a couple of good games late in the year last year. Keelan Cole's still there. And then they added Dante Moncrief. Dede Westbrook looks like he's about to be ready to start playing. And then DJ Chalk, we'll see how long it takes him to get onto the scene. Draft defense and a number one wide receiver were some of the things that I said they should do in a draft. DJ Chalk, I don't really look at DJ Chalk as a number one wide receiver. I look at him as more of a slot type because of his speed, but he can play that second one. They do have Marquise Lee that can play the slot. They have a lot of slot type guys, so maybe Chalk at 6'4" is going to have to put some weight on and play that number one wide receiver or number two wide receiver. We'll see there. Dante Moncrief, he could play the number one or the number two. So they've got really good options. I think this is going to be a good team. I think this team definitely does get second, though, to the Titans. I think the Titans are going to be a little bit hungry this year. I think the Titans underachieved last year. I think the Jaguars overachieved last year. I think things will balance themselves out this year. But I think Jaguars are definitely a playoff team, and I think they could definitely make some noise again this year in the playoffs if they get the right matchups, if their defense shows up, and they can run the ball like they did last year.
Off the dome when I rip it and kill it, flip it like skillets, cat pillin', feeling like a villain, chillin', willing to die for riches, 3 hoes on my lap like Christmas. They sleeping on the kid, they man he dirty like the dishes. I'm wishing these hoes would shut the